They finished lunch and went outside of the overcast courtyard. Hermione sat down on the stone step and buried her nose in a Voyager with vampires again. Harry and Ron stood talking about Quidditch for several minutes before Harry became aware that he was being closely watched. Looking up, he saw a very small, mousy-haired boy. He'd been trying on the sorting hat last night, staring at Harry as thought he was transfixed. He was clutching what looked like an ordinary Muggle camera, and at the moment Harry looked at him, he went bright red. "All right, Harry. I'm Colin Creevey," he said breathlessly, taking a tentative step forward. "I'm a Gryffindor too. Do you think it'd be all right if I could have a picture?" he said, and he raised his camera hopefully. "A picture?" Harry repeated blankly. "So I can prove I've met you," said Colin Creevey eagerly, edging further forward. "I know all about you. Everyone's told me about how you survived when you know who tried to kill you. And then he disappeared and everything, and how you still got a lightning scar on your forehead." His eyes raked Harry's hairline. "And a boy in my dormitory said that if I developed the film and the right potion, the pictures will move." Colin drew a great shuddering breath in excitement and said, "It's amazing here, isn't it? I never knew all this old stuff could do magic till I got the letter from Hogwarts. My dad's a milkman. He couldn't believe it either. So I'm taking loads of pictures to send home to him. And it'd really be good if I had one of you." He looked imploringly at Harry. "Maybe your friend could take it and I could stand next to you? And then you could sign it?" "Signed photos? You're giving me out signed photos, Potter?" Loud and scathing Draco Malfoy's voice echoed around the courtyard. He stopped right behind Colin and flanked, as he always was, at Hogwarts, by his age, thuggish cronies Crabbe and Goyle. "Everyone line up!" Malfoy roared at the crowd. "Harry Potter's giving out signed photos!" "No, I'm not," said Harry angrily, and his fists clashed. "Shut up, Malfoy." "You're just jealous," piped Colin, whose entire body was about as thick as Crabbe's neck. "Jealous!" said Malfoy, who didn't need to shout any more. Half the courtyard was listening now. "Of what? I don't want a foul scar right across my head. Thanks. I don't think I'll be getting your haircut open make getting your head cut open makes you of that special myself." Crabbe and Goyle were sniggering stupidly. "Eat slugs, Malfoy," Ron said angrily. Crabbe stopped laughing and started rubbing his knuckles in a menacing way. "Be careful, Weasley," sneered Malfoy. "You don't want to start any trouble, or your mummy will have you come home and take you away from school." He put up a shrill, piercing voice. "If you put another toe out of line—" A knot of Slytherin fifth years nearby laughed loudly at this. "Weasley would like a signed photo of Potter," smirked Malfoy. "It'd be worth more than his family's whole house." Ron whipped out his spello-taped wand, but Hermione shut Voyagers with Vampires with a snap and whispered, "Look out." "What's all this? What's all this?" Gilderoy Lockhart was striding towards them in the turquoise robes swelling around him. "Who's giving out signed photos?" Harry started to speak, but he was cut short by Lockhart, flung an arm around his shoulders and thunderingly jovial. "Shouldn't have asked. We meet again, Harry." Pinned to Lockhart's side in burning humiliation, Harry saw Malfoy slide smirkingly back into the crowd. "Come on then, Mr. Creevey," said Lockhart, beaming at Colin. "A double portrait can't do better than that, and we'll both sign it for you." Colin fumbled with his camera and took the picture as a bell rang before signaling that the start of afternoon classes. "Off you go! Move along!" Lockhart called to the crowd, and set off to the castle with Harry, who was wishing he knew a good vanishing spell still clasped to his side. A word to the wise, Harry, said Lockhart patronally as they entered the building through the door. I covered up for you back there with young Creevy. If he was photographing me, too, your schoolmates won't think you're setting yourself up so much. Deaf to Harry's statements, Lockhart swept him down to the corridor, lined with staring students, up the staircase. Let me just say that handing out signed fit pictures at this stage of your career isn't sensible. Look at a tad big-headed. Harry tried to be frank. They may well come at a time when, like me, you'll need to keep a stock handy wherever you go. He gave a little chortle. I don't think you're quite there yet, though. And he reached to Lockhart's classroom and he let Harry go. At last, Harry yanked the robe straight and headed for the seat in the very back of the class, where he busied himself with piling all 7 of Lockhart's books in front of him, so he could avoid looking at the real thing. The rest of the class came clattering in, and Ron and Hermione sat down on either side of Harry. You could have fried an egg on your face, said Ron. You better hope Creevy doesn't meet Ginny, or they'll be starting a Harry Potter fan club. Shut up, snapped Harry. The last thing he needed was for Lockhart to hear a phrase like Harry Potter fan club. When the whole class was seated, Lockhart cleared his throat, and a loud silence fell. He reached forward, picked up Neville Longbottom's copy of Travels with Trolls, and he held it up to show his own winking portrait on the front. Me, he said, pointing at it, winking as well. Gilderoy Lockhart, Order of Merlin, 3rd class, honorary member of the Dark Force Defense League, and a 5-time winner of Witches Weekly Most Charming Smile Award. But I don't want to talk about that. I didn't get rid of the Bandina Banshee by smiling at her. He waited for them to laugh. Few people smiled weakly. Oh, I see you've bought all a complete set of my books. Well done, well done. Well, I thought we'd start today with a little quiz. Nothing to worry about. Just a sec to see if you read them. How much have you taken in? When he handed out the test papers, he returned to the front of the class and said, You have 30 minutes. Start now. Harry looked down and the paper had read. What was Gilderoy Lockhart's favorite color? What is Gilderoy Lockhart's secret ambition? What is your opinion in Gilderoy Lockhart's greatest achievement to date? On and on it went. 2 sides of papers, right down to number 54. When is Gilderoy Lockhart's birthday? And what should his ideal gift be? Half an hour later, Lockhart collected the papers and rifled through them in front of the class. Tut, tut. Hardly any of you remembered any of what my favorite color is lilac. I say so in a year with the Yeti, and a few of you need to read Wanderings of Werewolves more carefully. I clearly state in Chapter 12 that my ideal birthday gift would be a harmony between all magic and all non-magic peoples, though I wouldn't say no to a large bottle of Odin's Old Fire whiskey. He gave them another roguish wink. Ron was now staring at Lockhart with an expression of disbelief on his face. Seamus Finnegan and Dan Thomas, who were sitting in front, were shaking with silent laughter. Hermione, on the other hand, was listening to Lockhart with a rapt of attention that gave a start as he mentioned her name. Ah, but Miss Granger, Hermione Granger, knew my secret ambition is to rid the world of evil and market my own range of hair care potions. Good girl. In fact, he flipped the paper over. Full marks. Where's Miss Hermione Granger? Hermione raised her trembling hand. Excellent, beamed Lockhart. Quite excellent. Take 10 points for Gryffindor. And so to business. He bent down behind his desk and lifted a large covered cage onto it. Now, he warned, it is my job to arm you against the foulest creatures known to wizard kind. You may find yourself facing the worst fears in this room. No harm can befall you whilst I'm here. All I ask is that you remain calm. In spite of himself, Harry leaned around his pile of books for a better look at the cage. Lockhart placed a hand on the cover. Dean and Seamus had stopped laughing now. Neville was cowering in the front of the front row seat. I must ask you not to scream when Lockhart lowered his voice. It might provoke them. As the whole class heads held their breath, Lockhart whipped off the cover. Yes, he said dramatically, freshly caught Cornish pixies. Seamus Finnegan couldn't control himself. He let out a snort of laughter that even Lockhart couldn't mistake as a scream for terror. Yes, he smiled at Seamus. Well, they're not. They're not very dangerous, are they? Seamus choked. Don't be so sure, said Lockhart, wagging his finger annoyingly at Seamus. Devilish tricky little blighters they are. The pixies were electric blue and about 8 inches high, with pointed faces and voices so shrill that it was like listening to a lot of bulgies arguing. The moment the cover had been removed, they had started jabbering and rocketing around, rattling the bars and making bizarre faces at the people nearest them. Right on, then, Lockhart said loudly. Let's see what you make of them. And he opened the cage. It was pandemonium. The pixies shot everywhere in every direction like rockets. 2 of them seized Neville by the ears and lifted him onto the air. Several shot straight through the window, showering glass. The rest proceeded to wreck the classroom more effectively than the rampaging rhino. They grabbed ink bottles and sprayed the class with them, shredded books and papers, tore pictures off the walls, upended waste paper baskets, grabbed and tore pictures off the walls, upended waste paper baskets, grabbed bags of books, and threw them all at smashed windows. Within minutes, half the class was sheltering under the desk, and Neville was swinging from the iron chandelier on the ceiling. Come on now! Round them up! Round them up! They're only pixies, Lockhart shouted. He rolled up his sleeves, brandishing his wand, and bellowed, Piscipius Pastromine! It had absolutely no effect. One of the pixies seized his wand and threw it out the window, too. Lockhart gulped and dived under his own desk, narrowly avoiding being squashed by Neville, who fell a second later and the chandelier gave way. The bell rang, and it was a mad rush for the door to exit. In the relative calm that followed, Lockhart straightened up, caught sight of Harry, Ron, and Hermione, who were almost at the door, and said, Well, I'll ask the 3 of you to nip the rest of them back into the cage. He swept past them and shut the door quickly behind them. Can you believe him? Roared Ron. One of the remaining pixies bit him painfully in the ear. He just wants to give us a hands-on experience, said Hermione, immobilizing 2 pixies at once with a clever freezing charms, then stuffing them back into their cages. Hands-on, said Harry, who was trying to grab a pixie clenching out of the reach of his tongue out. Hermione, he didn't have a clue what he was doing. Oh, rubbish, said Hermione. You've read his books. Look at all those amazing things he's done. He says he's done, Ron murmured.